Hello, this is the Future of Kernza. I'm Evelyn.
I'm Kier. I'm Ciaran.
And I'm Brynna. And Lynn is not with us today, but she was part of a group.
Okay. Throughout our week at Agrotech, we learned many things about Kernza, such as its uses, benefits to the environment, and some of the possible problems it poses. We did this in both classrooms and on farms. We did many experiments and went through the horticulture farm to learn more about Kernza firsthand. For our project, we decided to make a magazine focused on Kernza, detailing its pros and cons, and its uses in baking. We chose this format because we believe that Kernza has a potential to help us solve some issues that agriculture is facing. First off, in our presentation, I will be talking about the benefits of Kernza and some of the ways the crop could be improved in the future. Secondly, Lynn will be explaining some of the potential drawbacks of Kernza. And lastly, Brynna and Ciaran will be sharing their experiences with cooking with Kernza flour and some of the recipes they used. The idea is that Kernza will be taking the place of wheat. Both are grasses. Kernza just has much deeper roots. The deeper root systems of Kernza, which grow up to 10 feet, means that Kernza can more efficiently take atmospheric carbon out of the air and put it into the earth. The deep roots also allow for more efficient gathering of water and nutrients. In addition to these benefits, Kernza's deep roots mean that planting in loose soil could help slow erosion and weathering. You might see that Kernza is trademarked on all of our visuals. This is because the trademark is owned by the Land Institute. They are a nonprofit research organization and work on the development and distribution of Kernza. Here's Lynn to talk about the drawbacks.
While Kernza is a bright hope for our future, there are some problems with it currently. I'll be going over 6 of these briefly. The first problem Kernza has and must overcome before it can be a mainstream flour is its yield. As of now, the yield of Kernza is about 1/3 the yield of wheat. However, according to the Land Institute, its potential yield is rapidly increasing. Thirdly, as I mentioned earlier, Kernza has a low gluten content, which is not ideal because it does not have the same properties as regular flour, but it is also not 100% gluten-free. Because of this, people are less willing to use it and instead will turn to more conventional flours. The fourth issue that Kernza farmers are encountering is weeds. According to Kernza.com, weeds are the worst in the first year, but as time goes on, the Kernza plant will overpower them. However, weeds still pose problems to farmers even after that initial year. The fifth potential problem with Kernza is that while it is perennial, it doesn't last forever. It will last about 5 to 10 years, which is still far better than wheat, but it will have to be replanted after that, which could be an extra expense to farmers. The second concern farmers are having with Kernza is that as of now, you cannot insure Kernza like you can with many other crops, meaning that it's much more of a risk to plant it. You can get insurance for corn, wheat, soybean, among other common plants, and this plays a big role in farming. In 2022 alone, $4 billion were paid out to farmers for loss of crops. The final hurdle before Kernza can become a popular crop like wheat or corn, it's its harvesting time. Kernza must be harvested at a very specific time in its yearly life cycle. Otherwise, the seeds that we use to make flour out of will scatter away and the Kernza plant will be almost impossible to harvest. The problem with this is that the ideal time to harvest Kernza changes every year and it's very hard to predict. This is unique to Kernza because corn, for example, will tell you exactly how long until the corn is ready for harvesting, which is extremely helpful to farmers because it means it is one less task to keep track of.
Okay, I'm Brynna, and for one of my experiments, using Kernza flour in baking, I chose to use a simple recipe for ginger snaps, which were the cookies I gave to the judges, and sorry, I didn't have enough for you guys. And those were made with 100% Kernza flour, but I had also made batches, including a control batch of just regular all-purpose flour from King Arthur flour. And then there was also a 50-50 batch using half Kernza flour, half all-purpose flour, and then the 100% batch. And to swap out the flours, I basically just did a 1-to-1 ratio of Kernza flour. 1 cup Kernza flour is equal to 1 cup of all-purpose flour. This resulted in some of the cookies being flatter because of the low gluten content, but they also had a much larger diameter because they flattened. And my family and I taste tested the cookies to see how the flour had changed the taste and texture of them. And we found that the 100% all-purpose flour cookies were very fluffy and light, but they did not have a lot of flavor to them, as opposed to the 100% Kernza and 50/50 ones, which although they were chewier, they had much more spices and general nutty notes due to the Kernza flour. In all, the substitution of Kernza flour in various amounts in this type of cookie shows that although the flour causes baked goods to flatten and become denser, it can bring more flavor notes and depth to the eventual product.
I also decided to do a baking project with Kernza. I decided to bake flatbread with Kernza flour because I thought that it was something that would lend itself naturally to Kernza flour. I used a slightly modified version of a King Arthur flour recipe and made 3 batches. The first was 100% all-purpose flour. The second was 50% all-purpose and 50% Kernza flour. And the third was 100% Kernza flour. Aside from the flour substitution, I used a 1/4 teaspoon more baking powder than the original recipe to help offset the low gluten in Kernza. Overall, I thought this was a pretty successful project. The general process and cooking of the different types of flatbreads was the same, but the end results differed. The 100% Kernza flour flatbread was a little denser and flatter than the others, with a texture closer to pita, while the all-purpose one was closer to a naan. This difference, however, was not something that I would complain about, and without the contrast between the two types, I would not have been able to tell that anything was amiss with the Kernza flour flatbread. In addition, the Kernza flour flatbread had a slightly nutty and sweet flavor, which I thought complemented the salty flavor of the flatbread well. Making the flatbread with Kernza has taught me that using Kernza may mean having to make slight adjustments to recipes and having something that is not exactly what it would have been with all-purpose flour, but it will also give your recipe a greater depth of flavor and will often not make them any worse and may in some cases improve them. In summation, we have all researched and learned an extensive amount about Kernza, its uses, and the potential problems with it. We now know that it has many benefits compared to wheat, along with some kinks that still need to be ironed out. Throughout this process, we have all found that while there is still work to do, Kernza gives us cause to have hope for the future. Finally, we would like to thank Scott and Jenna for helping to teach us about Kernza and mentor us throughout this project, and Sarah, Liz, and Scott, along with everyone else who helped to make Agrotech possible. Thank you.
All right, before you run away, thank you, and thanks for the cookie. You could come up with a cool name for Kernza cookie. I'm not sure what that'll be. So I am interested in what you found out about using GMO technology to kind of adapt Kernza and as it relates to the all the ingredients in it. What's the thinking around what's your age group or your peers thinking about GMO, and how will that lend itself to marketing something like this?
So with Kernza, currently it has a gluten content where it's low enough that it doesn't act the same as all-purpose flour, but also high enough that it can't be a substitute for gluten-free flour. So GMOs are a good option for it because with current breeding strategies not using them, within our lifespan, we could maybe raise or lower the gluten content in Kernza 5 or 10%. But using GMOs, it could be taken to like the gluten content, which is comparable to all-purpose flour, and be used like that, or made to be completely gluten-free.